All right, everyone, buckle up because today we're going to be talking about dating. This is a huge topic. It feels like an insurmountable topic, but I'm going to try my best. I have so many thoughts about dating. I feel like, first of all, I'm a lover. My life has been so centered upon love and dating, really since the 6th grade. That's when I had my first girlfriend and my first kiss. And romantic love has been at the center of my attention basically since then, and it's never stopped. I think generally in our culture, there's a lot of weight, a lot of focus on romantic love, dating, relationships, getting married. I also think on our journeys through life, dating is the place where we really get into the sauce of like, where are we tangled up? Where are we holding on to attachments? As someone who's on a spiritual journey, dating really points to where my work is. It's really a way where you can see where you need to work on yourself. I had my first, I guess my 6th grade girlfriend was a long-term relationship. But I had 2 long-term relationships in high school, a long-term relationship in college. I've dated a lot. I'm in a relationship now. I have a lot to say. And okay, if I did end up titling this video Enlightened Dating, which is one of my top contenders right now, I just want to say I'm not making any claim to be enlightened. While I have a lot of experience with love, dating, and relationships, I certainly don't want to claim to be perfect, but I do think I've come to some perspectives that can help a lot. They've helped me a lot, and they've led to a vibrant and loving love life. I've got a stack of books here that I'm going to recommend throughout this episode. I've got a couple of, at least one question from a patron and some viewers to address. So buckle in. I'm drinking decaf. I don't know if you could see it, but look at this little pretty flower mug. Coffee doesn't taste that good. I want to start this episode by playing you guys a Ram Dass clip. Now, this is actually, I was like going through some shit in my love life, feeling discontent, wondering what was wrong. And I found this clip on YouTube by Ram Dass called Let Your Relationships Become a Vehicle for Freedom. I was super intrigued. This Ram Dass clip put words to what I was starting to feel like was wrong in my dating life. And it was very, very helpful for me. Since then, I've studied a lot of Ram Dass lectures. I've read 2 of his books. I'm about to read a 3rd. It's somewhere in this mess of books. And he's going to put it better than I can. So and this is what really started my budding, I guess, philosophy on love and dating. So I'm going to play it for you. Let's blow your mind.
Because when you push against somebody, even the subtlest model in your head, they should be different than they are, awakens in them at a very unconscious level, pushing back, a resistance, a subtle paranoia. And I have noticed in my human relationships that as I want less and less from each individual, there is much less paranoia in them at a deep level, and they are much more available immediately. The reason I'm saying all this is because you and I spend an huge amount of time in interpersonal relations. And the question I ask you, since you and I aren't going to monasteries to live our lives, since that's one of the things we do so much, wouldn't it be nice to make it a yoga? To make your human relationships your yoga? To make your human relationships the vehicle for becoming free rather than the vehicle to stay entrapped? And what is required is a shift in the way in which one looks at relationships, what they're about, what their function is. And you look at your relationships from the point of view of your separateness. How will you fulfill my needs? I'll be who you need me to be if you'll be who I need you to be. Now, that kind of symbiosis, that's all fine if you don't get trapped in it. But if you get trapped in it, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare rooted in your sense of separateness. It's like feeding the illusion of the separateness, which is the root cause of the pain. Can you and I enter into a dialogue knowing neither of us are real? Can we have needs without really thinking of them as who we are, where we're living? It seems to me that we come together through roles, through personality structures, through all these things. These are the vehicles through which we meet. These are the vehicles. The identification with the vehicle becomes a tremendous trap. And part of the yoga of relationship is to meet through the vehicle of all that stuff, but recognize that through the process of relationship, my relationship with you, let's find our way out of being trapped by that together. You help me and I'll help you, so that we can be in the roles in a kind of celebratory, free, playful way.
Wasn't that beautiful? I think the key thing is, and it was at the very beginning of that clip that really spoke to me, was that you can't have a model for another person. When you have a model for another person, you're basically putting them into a box that you want them to fit into. And the problem with that is that we are human beings. We are creatures of infinite change, right? The only constant is change. We're changing moment by moment. So if you're dating someone and you want them to be a certain way in order to fulfill a certain need in you, no matter how subtle that is, no matter how subconscious that is, you're going to create a situation that doesn't work. And the reason that this Ram Dass clip spoke to me so much is that I was coming out of my era of people pleasing. For whatever reason, how I was raised, my conditioning, my upbringing, I became a serious people pleaser. And I thought I needed to do what other people wanted from me. I thought that was my way of gaining love and acceptance in the world. But I started to have my spiritual awakening, and I was in a relationship at the time, and I was starting to feel very, very expansive. I was starting to feel comfortable with nature, that nature being change and my changing being, and I wanted to expand, and I wanted to be free. But this person that I was with at the time had such a model for me, and I didn't even realize it until I started being comfortable with change. And I started stepping into this realization that, like, I need to serve myself in life. Like, I can't get through life just trying to please others. That's actually like a self-deprecating way to live. The true way to live is actually to be yourself in the fullest, to flow with your change, and see which people you naturally connect with. Right, so in the language of attachment theory, you could say I lean towards more the avoidant type of attachment. Now, this is one of the books I do recommend. It's called Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. Now, this book outlines 3 attachment styles. Anxious attachment, that's one where you're more clinging onto the other person. You're more desperate for their attention. Secure is the golden balance in between the two, where the other one is avoidant. And the avoidant style tends to pull away, tends to value freedom, tends to potentially fear intimacy and actually run away from it when they start to get it. So, I don't even know if I would. So the reason I think this book is important is because it started to bring a consciousness to my own patterns, but I wouldn't get too serious, like identifying with attachment style and trying to heal it. What I do think it's good for is it's very good for the Western mind, where we want labels and definitions, and it's good for starting to understand the unconscious patterns that we've been dating with. So it is a helpful one there. And you could say, like, I've always leaned towards the avoidant type. I've always leaned towards wanting to be free. I never like feeling restricted. I want to feel like I'm autonomous, like I can do what I want. And now I've always known deep down that this could coexist with relationship. And don't get me wrong, as I'm saying anything, like, I want relationship. I want intimacy. I love it. But throughout my life, I found myself in relationships and then I felt stuck. So that's where I came from, kind of that place of like feeling restricted and feeling weird about that, but feeling like I had to serve this other person's needs, so I had to put myself into their box. This Ram Dass clip spoke to me. It spoke to me. It was like, oh, it makes sense that I've been feeling all this restriction and tension, and it's actually not good. Like, it's not good for me. I'm right. Like, I don't have to fit into other people's boxes so that they can feel loved. Like, I have to go on my spiritual path and grow and change and expand. So that Ram Dass clip really began to open my eyes to the fact that in dating, to my observation, and whenever I make a generalization, I'm not making any sort of claim. I'm just sharing my own experience. And my own experience, like, I attracted my own experience because of where I was in dating, right? So this is by no means an accurate thing, but like, in my experience, because of where I was, because of my neuroses, I feel like in 95% of dating, it's two people trying to control one another, right? It's like you go on a date and you already start to create an image of who this person is in your head and how they're going to fulfill your needs. And this is so dangerous. This is so dangerous because you can't put another person into a box like that, right? And as I described, my sensitivity was always being the one who is put into a box. I can't handle it. I can't do it. I cannot be put into a box. There must be some kind of way to relate that's just a free, open flow, right? And the way that I found that is to actually have love in the present, have relationship in the present. You can like talk about the future with a partner, and I like to call it dreaming, but you must know, there must be an awareness that talking about the future is not contractual. If you're creating a contract for the future and you're basing your present relationship that's filled with real love, real present moment love, if you're basing that on some promise of the future, it's going to be really faulty because we're incapable of predicting the future. It's not real yet. We don't have access to that part of the timeline yet. We cannot possibly predict that. So when we make promises like that, and when we rely on contracts, and the only need for a contract when you're dating with someone, the only reason you would need a contract when you're dating someone is if you're coming from an insecure place. If you're coming from a place of scarcity and need, you may need a contract. You may feel like you need that other person to promise you that they're going to be there in the future because you don't know if you can handle the insecure nature of life. So you want this false promise that makes you feel secure. But the thing is, it's a false sense of security. And when you do that contract game, you're playing a game of mutual control where you're trying to control the other person. And that simply cannot be for an enlightened relationship, for a conscious relationship, for a healing relationship. There cannot be a sense of mutual control. You absolutely must let each other be free. When you let each other free, when you set each other free, when you really just love each other in the present, that is true love. True love does not exist in the realm of contract or promise because those things are fake. What we can say is how we feel now. Like I can feel like I want to be with someone forever now, but there's a subtle difference there, and I'm describing how I'm feeling in this moment with an awareness and a caveat that obviously I cannot possibly predict who I'm going to be, right? Because the spiritual journey shows us that who we are is a illusion built up upon a fragment of thoughts, but we don't actually know who we are. We are just a flowing entity. So we can't make these false predictions. And if you make these false predictions, you could temporarily or for your whole life end up in a relationship. But if you're looking for conscious love, it's not the way. If you're looking for conscious love, you absolutely need to be okay with the unknown. You need to trust the universe. You need to let the other person do their thing. Right? So you absolutely, in my opinion, you absolutely 100% need to be okay with the other person walking away on a whim because they feel like it. You cannot cling to them in such a way where you're controlling them and forcing them to be with you. If they want to go, you're allowed to be sad and to grieve, but you have to let them go. We only want to be in relationships that exist by mutual free choice. If the relationship exists because either party is being forced to participate, is being forced to uphold a certain personality model, it's not real. It's not real. It's an illusion, right? I think on our growth journeys, we go through a key transition. Before this key moment, we prefer comfortable illusions. After this transition, we prefer the truth, even if it hurts us, right? So some people out there may prefer to be in a lifelong partnership that is not meant to be just because it makes them comfortable, right? They don't want to know that their partner has moved on in their hearts. They'd rather be safe with the illusion, physically be together, even though on the true intimate level, the relationship is over. They would rather that comfortable illusion because they're too afraid of change, too afraid of the truth. And then there are people who want to know the truth, who want to know if my partner doesn't want to be with me anymore, I want to know that so that I can move on, so that I can find someone who does want to be with me. If you want to find a conscious relationship, you absolutely have to set the other person free. You can make rules and agreements. You can decide to be monogamous, but it cannot become a contract. There must be, in my opinion, an acknowledgement that people change moment by moment, that the things we decide we cannot be held to forever. It needs to be a flow, right? Do you want to love someone conditionally or unconditionally? And vice versa. Do you want to be loved conditionally or loved unconditionally? And here's a hard pill to swallow. In order to love someone unconditionally, you must love them even if they no longer love you, right? Because if you only love someone because they love you in this moment, that's conditional love. There's a condition on that love. It's an agreement. It's not a conscious love. It's an agreement. It's a contract. You're bringing business and economy and law into it. True love is free love. You must be okay with the other person going, and they must be okay with you going, or else it's going to get clingy, right? And there's nothing wrong with having these tendencies to cling. We all have them. We all get insecure and jealous. It's built into us. And I think in the right relationships, you can verbalize and work through these things, right? But if that's the reality, if you're clinging and you really need them to stay, it's an agreement. It's not true love. There might be true love there underneath it, but you're kind of killing it. You know, if you're clinging too hard, like every relationship is going to be born in a true sense of love. That's what brings two people together. It's that underlying natural force of love. But then we want to cling and grab, and we choke by accident because we're insecure and because we're fearful of change. That was a tirade. I went on quite a manic spree of dating this summer. Something that I really like about dating and being single, especially because I was going through a spiritual awakening and embracing change so much, was that like every time I showed up on a first date, that person didn't know me. So I had the opportunity to be exactly who I was in that brand new moment. And because this person in front of me across the table on our first date knows nothing about me from the past, there is no feeling like I need to like accommodate for them this idea of who I am, right? I think this is actually an important point. I think when dating, there's a tendency to feel like you need to be your best self, like be like you kind of perform, like you want to seem pleasing to that other person. I actually think the best way to go is to, since you don't know that person, use it as an opportunity to be completely yourself, completely raw up front. Because if there's true love there, you being completely raw up front, that's going to need to come out anyways eventually. So why pump the brakes, right? If that person's going to love you for who you are, they're not going to be turned off by you being yourself right away. So we might as well show up and be authentic. And I actually like that opportunity of a first date to practice being exactly who we are in that moment without any notions from the past pressuring us to uphold any models from the past. We can be completely brand new, completely who we are right now. That's one thing I really enjoyed about my manic episode of dating last summer. And then I noticed how people, when there starts to be a connection, a lot of people start to want to put you in a box. They start to subtly want to control you. They want you to text them a certain amount. They want you to hang out with them a certain amount. Whenever I think my spiritual awakening made me very, very sensitive to when people want things from me, right? In the truly enlightened society, we don't need anything from anyone. We're just all so whole and so loving within ourselves that we're naturally loving to others. And we're all getting what we need by this harmonious exchange of energy. But as it is, there's so much void in people. There's so much emptiness in people. There's so much trying to fill the gap within ourselves using sex, using relationships, using alcohol, using material possessions. We're all trying to fill the gap instead of learning how to meditate and cultivating self-love and cultivating the ability to be comfortable with oneself, right? If you want to reach that place of conscious love that I was describing a moment ago, I also think you absolutely have to be 100% content with being alone. You can't just say it. You have to feel it in your heart. You have to have enough lived experience, enough experience with meditation that you truly love yourself. You truly love dating yourself. You truly love having experiences on your own. Because it's from that place of wholeness that you can meet another being and not need anything from them. So then when the natural love that is there unfolds, you don't have to cling to it. You can just enjoy its natural unfolding. And that natural unfolding can last a lifetime. I believe it can. But you can't cling to that possibility, because then you're going to suffocate it. And the only way you're not going to cling to that possibility is to be whole first. And I do think there are relationships where if the communication is strong enough, you don't need to be completely whole, but you must be able to have an awareness of where your work lies on yourself. And that's why Ram Dass said, what if we made our relationships a yoga? Because every time you get triggered in a relationship, instead of accusing the other person of not being what you need them to be for you, you can wonder to yourself, what is it that I need to do work on? So relationships can be a yoga. They can be a mutual way to work on ourselves, right? When you show up on a date, you can't show up trying to subtly manipulate someone into wanting to be there in a certain way for you. If you show up on a date and it goes really well, but then they start to drift, you have to let them drift. You have to let people drift. Because if you don't let people drift, you're going to be trying to cling on to someone who is not meant for you. One of the books I recommend, that I've recommended before, that really, really applies to dating is The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. Because if you trust the universe, you start to release your clinging to specific outcomes. I remember I used to show up on dates like really hoping that it would go well, like really wanting it to go well, really wanting the other person to like me. But when you trust the universe, it doesn't matter if the date goes well because you trust that there's a lesson in it no matter how the date goes. And you can apply that to relationships that last years. It's like, on the one hand, the longer a relationship goes, the more anxious you can get because the more you want it to last forever. On the other hand, the longer a relationship gets, the more you can just trust that it's going to last as long as it's meant to. And instead of creating this anxious tension of needing the relationship to last forever, you can just dance in the insecurity, enjoy the love that exists there and now in that relationship, and enjoy it for what it is. Enjoy it for what it is. Don't suffocate it by needing a specific outcome. I have this drawing that I made about trusting the universe. If you attach yourself to this specific path you've made in your mind of the relationship unfolding in a specific way, it's like, who are you to decide what's best for you? Who are you to decide something that the whole universe is in charge of? We can't control another person. We can't control the flow of life. That is out of our control. We are this little human being part of a total fabric. If you let go, you open yourself to all possibilities. Maybe this relationship you're in is so beautiful right now, and maybe it's meant to be so beautiful right now. And maybe the relationship will end one day because you're going to find another beautiful relationship. You can't attach yourself to one possibility because the chances that that possibility come exactly true as you have fabricated it in your mind are very rare, right? Manifestation is a thing, and I believe we can manifest things. But I think being attached to hyper-specific outcomes is very dangerous, and it's going to lead to disappointment. And it's going to lead to when there might be a breakup because you can't predict who you're going to be. You can't predict who that other person's going to be in a year. I don't want to manifest a breakup for anybody. If a breakup happens, you're going to close down to love in the future because you were attached to that specific outcome. Now, after the breakup, you're bummed out and you're closed off to love. But love is all around us. Love is right there. Love comes back. So don't attach to specific outcomes. Don't attach to how long you think a relationship should last. If you can dance in the insecurity, if you can love here and now, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be what it's meant to be. Trust the universe. Oh, Jesus Christ. Holy fuck. Lotus legs, y'all. I always forget that I'm in half lotus when I'm recording these, and then when I need to uncross, I'm like completely fucking dead. Let me circle back to the idea of people pleasing, right? So a trap that I fell into in my dating and relationships was really starting from the first date. I made it my goal to make that person like me. This is big, big no. This is people pleasing. This is putting someone else on a pedestal. This is a recipe for an unbalanced relationship. This is just not a way to live. You absolutely must operate from a place of fulfilling your own needs. You need to be you relentlessly. You need to do what you need to do. And you need to find lovers who are aligned on that path. And I promise you, they exist abundantly. You don't need to go out of your way, out of your path, out of your alignment. You don't need to sacrifice yourself in order to please another person, in order to receive love. That's not the way it works. That's a scarcity mindset, but love is abundant. If you're in, or you're healing through a predicament like that one, which I was deep in. I spent years in dating and relationships where my whole being was about pleasing the other person. And it's sad, really, to think. It's sad. But also, I needed to go through that in order to become conscious of it, so it's actually not sad. That's why we need to overcome the concepts of good and bad. There's no failure, no success, no mistakes. It's all just right here. And if you can love right here, that's real love. Anyways, if you're in a similar predicament of people pleasing, if you're putting people on pedestals, if you're being resentful that you're not having your needs met by another person, I have 2 book recommendations. One I was so embarrassed by that I scratched out the name on the side. It's called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert A. Glover. Now, this is a very it's directed at men, but anybody can read it. It's about sticking up for yourself. It's about overcoming people pleasing. It's a big call out. It's a huge call out. This book refers to the nice guy syndrome, aka the people pleaser who tries to serve everyone else in order to get his needs met, and how this is low-key a subtle manipulation. You're actually being dishonest about who you are. You're not speaking your truth. You're not telling people what you want. You're subtly trying to manipulate them into giving you what you want. Isn't this crazy? People pleasing is low-key a toxic, subtle but toxic form of manipulation. Because you're not being true. You're not doing what you need to do. You're not being honest. You're serving another person, trying to control them into giving you love. It's crazy that I see this all now. It's quite the journey I've been on. So No More Mr. Nice Guy calls us out and helps you work through that. I won't get too much more into detail about that, but I do recommend it if this is your predicament. If you're generally people pleasing, and even though it's aimed at men, I think anybody can read this if you're putting yourself into that position in relationships, and not even just romantic relationships for that matter, but also any kind of relationship. Generally, we need to be getting our needs met. We need to be asking for what we want. We can't be people pleasing to everyone, hoping that the world is going to love us back. It's just not how it works. We need to fulfill ourselves, love ourselves, and take the love that we get by the laws of nature. We don't need to manipulate in order to get it. We don't need to put ourselves second in order to get it. Putting yourself first, if any other people pleasers out there listening, I know there's this deep-seated fear of being labeled as selfish, but you actually have to learn to be selfish. No More Mr. Nice Guy will help with that, as will Set Boundaries, Find Peace. If the gendered framework of No More Mr. Nice Guy is too scary, Set Boundaries, Find Peace will do the same job for you. Although I like how harsh and direct No More Mr. Nice Guy was. Really helped me out, but Set Boundaries, Find Peace is good too. Essentially, it's if someone's crossing a boundary, if you're feeling any type of anxiety, in a partnership, you have to set boundaries and find peace. So for example, right, I described where I come from with dating, the predicament I found myself in. It was like I was trying to be what other people needed me to be. So then I was falling into the box that I could feel they were making for me, and I was falling into the box that I could feel that they were making for me in their minds, that box that would make them the most comfortable. But by doing that, I was losing myself, right? But I had created the pattern and the habit and the expectation that I would stay in that box. So when I had a spiritual awakening and I started to be like, oh, I can step my foot out of the box. Oh, wait, I can step out of the box completely and run around and be free. When I learned that I could do that and I started doing that, and that partner at the time wanted me to go back into the box, that's when I learned, with the help of books like this, to set boundaries, be like, no, actually, this is what I need to do. I need to be outside of this box. This is who I am. That was really important. And in my case, right, that person did not respect those boundaries. So I actually had to set the ultimate boundary, which is a breakup. Ending a relationship is an ultimate boundary. Ooh, man, this is a juicy topic. This actually brings up another important point, because as a people pleaser in dating, I was terribly afraid to end relationships. Even when I knew I had to. I think there was a relationship that I held on to for over a year after I knew in my heart it was over, because I was afraid to break up with them, because my model for being loved in this life was pleasing others. And obviously breaking up with someone, they're not going to be too pleased with me. So I was afraid to do it. But when you start to heal out of your people pleasing, when you start to heal from putting people on pedestals, you start to become more comfortable with setting boundaries, even though it's uncomfortable. And if you come to a point where in your heart you need to set the ultimate boundary and break up with that person, you come to a point where you just have to do it, even though they may not like you, even though they may be displeased with you, because you have to do what you need to do. And actually getting out of a relationship that you know in your heart is wrong is the greatest service you can do for both parties, right? Even if they are still, do you remember that transition I described? Even if they are still in that place where they would rather have the comfortable illusion, you've surpassed that point and you can't do that anymore. So you have to tell the truth. And that's going to be the best for them, because we all, I believe, whether we know it or not, we want to get to the other side of the hump. We want to get to the place of truth. We don't want to be in illusion. We want to be in truth, because in truth, there's pure love. In truth, there's no suffering. So if you need to break up with someone, you have to do it. It's the best thing you can do for everybody involved, whether they know it or not. Polysecure is a absolutely essential follow-up on attached. I'm not saying anyone needs to go out there and become polyamorous, but I do think this book is a phenomenal framework for how to communicate through love. Something else I noticed throughout my summer of dating, I noticed that people in general, and again, when I'm generalizing, I'm just talking about what I attracted, right? Because of where I was on my journey. So obviously there's an abundance of conscious communicative lovers out there, but because of what I was attracting, I wasn't very communicative. I wasn't very conscious. So I was attracting the same. This summer when I was dating, I found that most people were completely uncomfortable with communication. People would rather keep things unspoken, play subtle guessing games, analyzing what it meant if they texted fast or not fast, instead of just asking if the person likes them and where they're at in their dating life, kind of keeping everything unspoken and just like subtly hoping for the right outcome. So strange. As I started to awaken, I was like, what is this? Like, what are people doing? Why are we not talking? Why can't we just, like, for example, if a date didn't go that well, why are we ghosting? Why are we just not saying it outright? There's like this fear of honesty. Like, people are afraid of being honest. I remember one thing I experienced this summer was, and I practiced, I was like, because of this awakening I was going through, I was being honest because I was trying to find people who wanted honesty, and I was trying to find the honest people. So I was very honest. And when I was unsure that I liked someone, I would tell them to their face. I would be like, I'm not sure I'm feeling it. Like, this thing is making me anxious. I don't know. Right. I tried to be gentle with it. Like, but I was very honest. And when I didn't like someone, and when something wasn't working, and when I felt someone like clinging too hard, I would actually bring it up directly, right? Because I was trying to manifest a love that was honest, that was communicative, that wasn't afraid of sticky conversations. How are you going to find conscious love if you can't have a sticky conversation? So I was getting into those right away. And one person I dated briefly this summer accused me of being violently honest. And I took it as a compliment. I was like, yeah, I am violently honest. I'm not trying to withhold the truth. I think so many people in dating culture are playing this game where they withhold the truth and they'd rather not know. They're like afraid to hear it. They won't ask if another person likes them or wants to get into a relationship with them. They'd rather keep guessing, because when they're guessing, they can fill in the answer in their own mind, and that's very comfortable and pleasing to them, right? I'd rather just know the truth moment by moment. I'm here for the truth. If you're interested in a conscious communication like that, Polysecure is a great way to do it. It also goes deeper into attachment theory. And again, I'm not trying to push polyamory on anybody. I don't think there's anything wrong with monogamy when it is genuinely a mutual free choice by two parties. But it must be a free choice. And I think more often than not, there's actually a little bit of mutual control going on there. So diving into this literature about polyamory was super, super enlightening for me. And it's a great just way to get more communication skills and to learn how to be unafraid to actually communicate and set boundaries. I think there's a lot of fear of speaking the truth out there. And I'll bring up the last book in my pile here. If you're going to read any book on this pile, you absolutely have to read Intimacy by Osho. Right, I tend to come at things from a spiritual place. I think all of the books on this pile, except The Universe Has Your Back, which is more of a spiritual book, but most of the books on this pile are kind of intellectualizing things, whereas Intimacy by Osho goes straight to the core, right? It goes straight to the core of how we're going to build a conscious relationship. And what is at the core of how we're going to build true love and true intimacy? It's that we show up and we're completely ourselves. We don't wear any masks, right? And a mask can include being non-communicative, not being upfront about how you're feeling, right? Like if you're in a phase of dating someone where you're not sure about how you feel about them, if you're hiding that, you're actually wearing a mask and you're trying to protect the other person's feelings, right? It's all connected to what I've been talking to. If you show up, if you're in the present moment, if you show up spiritually naked, that's how you truly get to know someone. When you let go of future, when you let go of past, when you just show up there and you're there and you don't need, and you're fit and you're full within yourself and you love yourself, and you show up and you don't need that person to love you because you're good, that creates a space where true intimacy can be born. This book blew my freaking socks off. I made a TikTok where I shared some of my favorite quotes from this. I will put that here if you want to pause and look through those quotes. I just gave myself more work to do in the editing process. Oopsie. I feel like I'm touching on a lot. Like I said, this feels like an insurmountable topic. But I'm trying my best, and what comes out is what I'm going to have to go with, because if I try to totally address everything about this topic, it's like a big mountain, and I'm going to start to get stressed and anxious trying to say everything. I do want to answer some questions, because I got some questions about this. So if you want to ask any questions for me to answer on this podcast, patrons get priority. So if you want to join the Patreon community, I also just recorded my first guided meditation, which will be coming out weekly. And if you leave any comments on Patreon, or if you DM me or hit me on our Patreon Discord, I am very likely, no promises, but I'm prioritizing those questions for sure. Question 1, and I'm going to keep these anonymous. I fell in what I felt like was real love for the first time with my ex-partner, and we were together for 3 years. I thought we would marry eventually. Fast forward, things ended without much closure. 10 to 11 months later, she was married. That's a tough one. It brings me feelings of not being good enough and what I could have done better, and general self-doubt and anxiety. Okay. So this is hard, right? And when we go through a breakup, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to grieve. We loved that person. We got comfortable with their presence. There's a loss there, and there's nothing wrong with being sad. But I see how it can feel like this slap in the face or trigger self-doubt when that partner then goes and gets with someone else. And look, I'll be honest, I'm coming from the other side. I move on very quickly. I tend to be the person who breaks up with my partners because of everything I've described. And I also tend to move on pretty quickly into a new relationship because I stay open to love. And it never has anything to do with that other person. Right? When I need to break up with somebody, there's something in that relationship that isn't working anymore, right? It's like a boundary. Maybe I just need to move on. Maybe the universe is calling me away. It's nothing personal with that other person. I actually think about all of my ex-partners with extreme fondness, right? And I don't know how your ex-partner... And I don't know how your ex-partner is feeling or what they're going through. And the thing is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because everybody in this life is on such an individual journey. No matter how intimate we get with someone, it's like you can't really know what's going on with them. And like I was saying, you need to, if someone wants to drift, you have to let them. Like love can't be totally secure because the nature of life is insecurity. So if someone's going to drift, we have to let them, and we can't take it personally. So while I think it's natural for feelings of self-doubt to arise and wondering what we could have done better, it's like, it wasn't our job to do anything better. It was our job to show up and be who we were. And if they want to go, they go. That's their business. It's not your business. And maybe for some more consoling advice, right? When I think about my past relationships, and I've grieved hard some really beautiful relationships after breakups that I've been through, I've cried, I've been depressed. It's like on the other side, it's always like, oh, that had to happen. That relationship wasn't working anymore. There was something better on the other side. And the other side doesn't necessarily mean another relationship. It could mean that there's something very beautiful for you to find on your own. That's why you need to trust the universe. You need to stay open. Stay open to what that breakup could be trying to teach you, trying to guide you towards. I know for me, after breakup periods, there tends to be a rapid self-growth period, a new motivation to work, to exercise, to try new things, to live life to the fullest, to connect with friends. Stay open to all these, right? Whenever something goes, whenever we let something go, space opens up. So when someone breaks up with us, we can continue to cling in our minds, but we have to let go. We have to set them free, because that's going to open up space in us for whatever we're meant to do, right? And when we have that fresh space of a breakup, and when we let them go, and when something feels right, whether it's connecting with friends, trying a new hobby, whatever, we should go with that. There's going to be a lot of beauty in that. That's the universe ushering us along, right? We need to stay open. And another thing, right? Like how I was saying, we don't know what journey another person's on. Like, love cuts so deep. It's rooted in our childhoods. It's rooted beyond that. It's rooted at the inception of the universe, if you want to go there. It's so unique. Our karma with love is so unique for each of us. You don't know what that other person is doing with their new partner. It could be a repetition of a pattern. It could be another lesson for them. Or maybe that's their soulmate and they found their happiness, and that's great, and you should be happy for them, right? Remember, unconditional love. We don't want to love people if they meet certain conditions. Hard pill to swallow, but we don't want to love people just because they love us. When you really love someone, which typically is born in first self-love, true self-love, second loving everybody and everything, and then when you have a romantic lover, that simply applies to them. You just love them unconditionally. It's so beautiful, and you want the best for them. And if in the humble position you need to take to really have a conscious, loving relationship is that if what's best for them doesn't involve you anymore, you have to set them free, and you have to trust that that's going to open space in you for what's best for you. So stay positive, but it's okay to have a hard time. My advice tends to be very cut right to the point. That's how I like to do it, but yeah, of course, it's going to be a little hard. Sending good vibes to you. Thanks for the question. Okay, and I had a similar question. Got any tips for when you meet the right person at the wrong time? Currently going through it, and it's absolutely crushing me. She moved out of town for school. I thought we would go long distance, but she backed out on me, and I don't know what to do. Again, I'm just going to read my answer. I actually responded to this person. There's no such thing as right person, wrong time. The right person only exists for however long the relationship exists. Once the relationship ends, it's no longer the right person. I believe in non-possessive love. Set them free. The universe is creating space for you to experience something else. Allow it. They can still mean a lot to you, but don't cling. They need to have the experience they are meant to have. If the gravity is strong enough, you two will come back together, but you can't force it. Gravity is not up to you. Right? So that's my take on right person, wrong time. It's like, that's a projection of ego, right? Whoever you're in love with right now, that's the right person. And if you have to break up, then they're no longer the right person, and you can open yourself to finding another right person, right? It's like, if you can actually be here now, one, and trust the universe, two, then you can enjoy love for what it is in the present. And we don't have to go on ranking our relationships, right? Like, we can enjoy the relationships that we have right in front of us. They can be totally fulfilling and beautiful, and whenever they end, they can end, and we can open ourselves up to new, right? And we don't have to decide in our head, oh, that was the right person, wrong time. Oh, that relationship was a failure. No. While it existed, you were there. That was everything it needed to be. And we don't have to map these projections that the relationship needs to follow a certain path in order to be right. It's all right if it's here. And as soon as you go deciding how you think it should go in the future, that's when you start creating the analytical possibility of failure, which is just a projection. Okay, that was a doozy. I have no idea what I just said, but it came out of me, so it must be right. And I hope you found any of this valuable. I encourage your discussion in the comments if you're here on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, I think you can leave me a voice note. Patrons, please, I encourage your question and discussions in the Patreon comments and in the Discord. I love you all. No reading update for this episode. I'm still reading Awareness by Osho. I'm still loving it. And I'm still traversing my own journey through life, my own journey to inner peace and pure love, you know. That's it. Best of luck on your dating journeys. Feel free to bring any of this up the next time you go on a date, or bring any of this up to your partner. But be careful, because the Ram Dass stuff led me to a breakup. But it is what I needed. You know, it was what was best. It was what was right. Okay, namaste.